Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. I'm really excited for today's episode because we are going to figure out your personality type and your partner's personality type. That way you can understand each other and really maximize each one of your strengths so that way they complement each other instead of conflicting with each other. So today we're here with relationship coach and Myers-Briggs expert, Gabriella Cardona. Thank you, Gabriella, for being here. I'm super excited to start this. Let's get right into it. If someone wants to figure out how they could maximize their strengths, how should they start?
Get your personality, really understand who you are. Because when you understand functional order, which is beyond just your personality description, it's the very specific things that you're good at and the very specific things that you have a challenge with. That's going to be very empowering because it's going to make you feel more proactive and more self-aware. When people are self-aware, they're self-confident. I would give them the personality profile system to say, there are going to be things that are as easy as breathing for me. And then there's going to be things that are running uphill, barefoot in the snow. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be suffering. Even if I get really, really good at that particular activity, it's going to be exhausting for me to do. And when the people in my life know that my nature, my personality just doesn't want to do these things, they're going to be encouraging and supportive and very insightful and understanding.
Yes, that makes life so much easier. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Myers-Briggs is made up of 16 different personality types, and in each personality type, there are 4 letters. Gabriella, you want to explain that to us?
Yes. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Personality Profile System identifies 4 different facets of your behavior. First one is about your social energy. In order to interact with other people, in order to do things in our daily life, we need to obtain energy. And then when we do things, we spend our energy. First one is introversion or extroversion. The second letter is about where you focus. There are things going on around us all day, every day, even when we're asleep, but there are also things going on inside of us all the time in our mind and heart and body. Second letter is about, are you externally focused or are you internally focused? Now the third letter is, how do you make decisions? Are you going to make a decision based on intellectually, academically, logically, analytical fact, or are you going to make decisions based on creating emotional pleasure inside of other people? And then the fourth part of your personality is, after you've made a decision, how do you prefer to carry out the decisions that you've made? Are you more flexible and spontaneous, fly by the seat of your pants, or are you predictable and planned and structured in the way that you do things?
Okay, I hope you understand this structure a little bit more now, and it's not just ISTNJs. There's a reason. There's a system to how this works. There's 4 categories, and in each category, there's 2 options that could be your letter. Now, just before we go and answer these questions Gabriella has for us so that way we could figure out our personality type, I want to remind you that everyone has a little bit of everything in them. The question is, which one is easier for you? Okay, remember that. You have both, but you want the one that is easier for you. Even if you end up doing the other one more because of something that you learned or pattern behaviors or stuff like that, it's the one that is easier for you. While we do this, I want you to think of 2 things. Number 1, what letter you are. You might want to write it down if you could, if you're not driving or cooking while you're doing this. And number 2, what letter your partner is.
Yeah.
So that way you could understand yourself and understand your partner. But don't mix up the letters, because then you might have some letters by you and some letters by your partner, okay? You ready to do this, Gabriella?
I am so ready to do this.
Okay, so let's start by social energy, introvert and extrovert.
Okay, now there are things that in life we do by ourselves, and there are things that we do with other people. Introverts get their energy to do things in life when they are alone. And sometimes they have important people in their life that they bring into their very intimate space. They are part of their social group. There's only a few of them, and they're very very, very important, precious people to introverts. Extroverts are people who actually get energy by being around other people. It can be a lot of people that they don't know very well. The fact is, when they are around other people, they get more energy in order to be alone. Introverts get their energy when they are alone in order to be socially interactive with large groups of people, especially people that they don't know. When you use the word friend, is it something that's very intimate and very passionate and very profound and very special? Or is it just someone that you're fond of and that you enjoy being around? An introvert would be able to say, in 100 years of life, they would be able to count on one hand the number of people that are special enough to them get that letter friend, right? That important status. An extrovert can have 500 friends just after going to a sporting event where there were 5,000 people.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because like I always say, not everyone's a friend. I'm for sure introvert. If you get a friend title, that means like it really means something. I mean, I'm nice to everyone. I have no problem. I'll talk to a stranger. I'd love to find out more about you, but you're not getting the friend title the first time I meet you. Sorry.
Right. And even in life, there are going to be a lot of people that an introvert would love and like and respect. But friendship is about intimacy, truly personal intimacy. Well, no, for an extrovert, if I like you, we're friends. If there's a positive energy between us, we're friends. And even if there isn't necessarily positive energy between us, if we can have a good time around each other, you definitely qualify as a friend.
And let's just clarify, none is right or wrong. It's just coming from a place of understanding how people work, how your partner works, so that way you could relate to them better.
Right. And the fact is, the world needs both kinds of people, because in the different kinds of relationships, in the different settings of relationships, in the different dynamics of social functionality, the world needs introverts and the world needs extroverts. Now, the other question that I love to ask people is, when you are having a social interaction with someone, how much does it bother you to be interrupted? If you were saying something important and someone interrupted you, and you had to stop what you were saying to let them finish, and you got irritated that they interrupted you, you're probably an introvert. An extrovert would just keep talking. An extrovert would keep talking over the person, and in fact, they would be able to talk about the same thing at the same time, and they wouldn't even realize that they had been interrupted, because they're just going to keep talking, and they would even be able to raise their voice to get the sentence out that they wouldn't have a problem with the other person raising their voice as well. Introverts do not like unnecessarily excessive volume when they're having a social interaction. They like to keep it in a fairly, moderate volume, and they like to let people finish speaking, and they really need for others to let them finish as well.
I hope everybody has decided which letter they are and what their partner is. Let's go on to, where's your focus?
If we have 5 senses with the world that we're in now excessively stimulating them at all times, our brain has a subconscious level that basically absorbs all of the information that our senses are creating and providing, taking those pieces of information apart, putting complete thoughts together, deciding what it wants to do with that information. But our senses are still going to be going on around us. Sometimes we just have to take a look inside of ourselves and say, what does that mean? Or what am I going to do with that information? Well, you know what? The present, the world, life, society is still going on around us. The question is, when you are conscientiously focusing on something, do you prefer to focus on what's going on around you, occasionally taking a look at what your insides are creating in the way of thoughts and ideas and feelings? Or do you really have an awareness of what you're thinking and what it means, and making connections? And occasionally you'll take a look at what's going on around you just to make sure you don't miss it.
Yeah, so let's just clarify which letters are what.
Okay, sensory. The S is someone who is very aware of and very engaged in their external environment. The letter for intuitive, intuitives are very internally inclined in their focus. The first letter went to I for introvert.
Right, we forgot to mention that. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, and the first one, the extroverts are E and the introverts are I.
Right. Okay, so on the second letter, you're either sensory or intuitive. N is for intuitive, because I already was delegated to introvert. So you're either S or N for your second letter.
Is there any more descriptions you could say for those two?
Yes. When you're thinking about what does life mean, or thinking about what could potentially be in the future. That's something an intuitive person would be focused on. But some people are like, well, I do think about the future and I am aware of what's going on around me. One of the things that I say to people is sensors really, really like to create stimulating experiences like food. They will literally try food just to have that stimulation, because for sensors, first-hand experience is very, very valuable. An intuitive person would say, I can see that right there. I'm not interested in trying that food. And you know what? It smells kind of funky. Well, you know what? A sensor would say, wow, that smells really weird. I think I want to try it just to see if it's as bad as it smells. Sensors really do want to have that experience and that stimulation because it's about the right here, right now. Just do it. And
I have a question for you on that. Do you find that people with sensory issues or HSPs are more sensors in general?
No, definitely not. Because not always your focus is going to determine your behavior. So when we're talking about things like that, the other question I ask people is, how much do you contemplate the future conceptually? Because there can be people who do want stimulation for emotional reasons. If a person is not necessarily healthy in one way or another, emotionally or mentally, it's very important to ask the deeper questions about, do you focus on things that are more profound in nature? Like, why would someone want to eat that food? A sensor would say, well, who cares? When we're talking about other people, who cares why? An intuitive would say, because I need to understand what's behind that experience, because I want to understand how it's connected to the other things and the other people in this situation, not just the food.
Okay, that makes sense. I see now how the sensory issues don't have to do with the personality type, but I'm still confused for myself. I don't know if I'm an S or an N. I've never been able to figure it out.
Let me give you another example. A lot of intuitives like to make jokes that you have to think about, or they like to use words as metaphors. They like to be metaphorical in when they say, where are you? Okay, a sensor would say, well, I'm standing right here in front of you. What kind of a stupid question is that? Why are you asking me that? Well, no, an intuitive would mean, where are you emotionally and why are you there? And what does that mean relative to our relationship? A sensor would say, oh my gosh, you're giving me a headache. I'm right here. Who cares? Now let's just go do something. And an intuitive would say, but I really do want to understand it beyond the right here, right now. And so a sensor then, when they are thinking about where are we going, their interpretation of the question would be very literal. We're going to the store, or we're not going anywhere. Are you going somewhere? Because I don't see you going anywhere. But an intuitive would say, where are we going? That means as a couple and in our life and spiritually. And it would be the beginning of a conversation. For a sensor, that kind of question would be a very brief, very literal, and very specific answer. Did that help you at all to understand?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know why every time I've took any of these tests or done any reading on it, I couldn't have figured it out because I'm really strong, probably almost equal in both. So one's a tiny bit more than the other, and I haven't figured that out yet. But let's go on to the next one.
Actually, could I give you another example?
Yes.
When a sensor has a stimulating experience, like for example, being touched by something cold, they feel it intensely, and they would respond by actually physically moving their body because they had the experience of that entire stimulation, right? It would be physically and mentally and emotionally, and intuitive could have that exact same physical experience, and they might not even notice that it happened. Or if they're looking for the peanut butter in the cupboard, they could be looking right at the peanut butter and not see it. A sensor can literally see 180 degrees at all times. They saw what happened over there, as they heard what happened over here, as they smelled what was going on over there, so they can immediately determine what's going on in their external environment. An intuitive might actually be looking at something and not see it because they're not really conscientiously paying attention to it all the time. A sensor really does know and want to know and is very aware of all of the different things going on around them, because they want to engage with it and they want to respond to it by physically experiencing life in a proactive and physical way.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's go on to the next one, the approach to decision making. thinkers and feelers. So these are T's and F's if you want to write down the letter that you are.
Now, this is actually one that I find people struggle with the most because they want to be both, because both are very good things to be. Now, thinkers are people who make decisions based on logical, rational, analytical facts. They really do want everything to make sense academically, intellectually. They can't say, you know what, I see the contradiction here in this conceptually, so I think it's going to be a bad idea to do this particular thing in this particular way because it's contradictory in some way. That by definition makes it a bad thing to do. A feeler would say, but if it's going to create emotional pleasure inside of someone, that's going to be beneficial for society because it's going to be healthy for that person. It's going to create positive energy. It's going to stimulate good experiences for people. And it's okay if it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. There are just certain things about being human that aren't ever going to make sense. And a thinker would say, no, actually, if it doesn't make sense, it will do harm. And I don't care if it makes you emotionally happy. If what's happening is making you emotionally happy and it's a stupid thing to do, that means you need to fix something about what's going on in your mind or in your heart to realign yourself with what is logical and rational and just plain makes sense. Everybody says, well, I do both, and what makes sense does make me happy. Okay, so here's one of the questions that I asked. If you had to choose between what made sense and what made someone else happy, if they were literally opposite choices, which one would you naturally be more inclined to do? And one of the examples that I use is if you had to perform life-saving surgery on someone that you love very much, and you've never done surgery before, you have no idea of how to perform this particular operation, and you had a book right there, an instruction manual, and you had to create pain in them because you didn't have the anesthesia for them. How easily would you be able to read the book in order to understand the procedure, in order to accurately perform the activity if you knew you were inflicting pain, if you were causing the person that you love pain by doing those things that the book is telling you to do? A thinker would be able to disconnect emotionally and get very, very analytical and very academic and say, okay, so this goes here and I do this way, and they would be able to block out the screaming and crying. A feeler would be in so much pain knowing that they were the one causing this experience for the person. They wouldn't be able to read words on a page and go, okay, so that means. They would be very overwhelmed.
It's very easy to see why it's hard for people to decide which one they are, because like you said, we have a bit of both of it in us, but which one actually gets you to make those decisions, then it's what it is.
And a lot of people, when it comes to being a feeler, they think it means they're emotional. Hey, we got a lot of emotional thinkers. Or that if you're a thinker, it means you're smart. Some of the most brilliant people in the world have been feelers. It's not about whether you're smart or whether you're emotional. It's about how much does other people's happiness and unhappiness determine what you will end up doing. Thinkers are relatively okay making a decision that's going to make someone else unhappy, because if that person is unhappy by a logical and an intelligent and rational choice, that really is the problem of that other person. It's not an error in the thinker's judgment or decision to do that activity.
People who just make decisions based on like the gut feeling, like their intuition's telling them, are those more likely to be feelers?
If we're talking about a decision that involves another person, yes. If it's a decision based on, how you're going to budget this month or which gas you're going to use, because there are people who have that ability to make really, really great decisions and they don't necessarily know exactly why. But if we're talking about a decision that is going to be affecting the emotional state of another person, feelers have a great ability to say, wow, this is what this person needs. They're very aware of and they're very responsive to it. And they don't necessarily know why, other than because I really think this is going to make another person feel good. It's going to be good for their soul. A thinker could say, yeah, you know what, it's going to make this person crazy. I've got a pretty good idea, or I don't really care how it's going to make them feel. I'm going to go ahead and make a decision that's a good decision on paper, and I don't really care how the other person feels about it.
All those descriptions and everything that you described, the feeler, all has to do with decisions that have to do with another person, not decisions that only affect themselves.
Yes,
so that's really interesting, because the thinkers, that also has to do with affecting another person or only themselves.
It's about the fact that people are a very small portion of their decisions. If we said, we're going to make a decision of where to go for vacation. A thinker would say, well, okay, we've got date that we're going to be going on vacation, what it's going to cost us, how many people are coming, and how much the people that are coming are going to enjoy it. So the people and the pleasure of the people would be not more than 25% of the deciding factor. For the feeler to make a decision, everything that they did would be based on creating emotional pleasure for other people. Would the budget, it's kind of an expensive trip. Would that upset anybody? Okay, well, it's this time of the year. Is that bad for anybody's calendar? Okay, we have different things that we're going to be doing. Is that going to bring pleasure for people? Everything that a feeler would do would be based on, let's go ahead and create pleasure for other people. When we're making a decision, it's very important to base what we're doing on taking the need and the feelings and the desires of other people into consideration. A thinker would say, okay, that's one detail of a decision, and it's not more important than the fact is we don't have the money to bring you pleasure. You need to change what brings you pleasure. Or, you know what, that's not going to work well on our calendar to base when we're going on your schedule. You're going to have to change your schedule in order to accommodate us. A feeler would not want to do that. They really would need to make sure every facet of that trip that they're taking would be good for the pleasure of all of the people involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go on to our last letter. How do they carry their decisions out? J, judgers, and P, perceivers.
Okay, a judger is someone who says, I really like to have consistently predictable and structured activities and environment in my world. I feel better when I know what the boundaries are and what the standards are, and when they are enforced, and when everybody follows them, because that creates safety and security and stability for everybody involved. That's a judger. A perceiver is someone who says, you know what, standards are good, rules are good, guidelines are very helpful, but you know what, that's not what life is about. Life is random, and it's inconsistent, and it's unpredictable. And when we're talking about actually doing things in life, all of those things that a judger would say really do need to be established and consistently enforced, you know what, that's just not going to happen. And if you're thinking that you can control the environment and the people in it so much that you can create that kind of stability, you're just not being reasonable, and you're not being honest with yourself. So for every rule, there are 3 exceptions. I am going to be prepared for when those rules have been broken, or when the circumstances have not supported the system, or when, you know what, different factors that we really weren't thinking about all of a sudden showed up and influenced the people that were involved. I will be ready to deal with whatever happens when it happens, because that's really what life is about.
I think also judgers like making plans and lists.
Oh, yes. There are actually 3 different things that I'll ask people. One is, when you have a schedule, how important is it for you to not only show up on time, but maybe even show up a little early? Well, a judger would say, I would rather be 59 minutes early than 1 minute late. A perceiver would say, well, if it hadn't started by the time I got there, then I'm not really late. Another thing I say is, do you like to write lists? One of the things that judgers will do is they absolutely love to write their list, but they love even more check off things on their list. One of a really good indicator of whether or not you're a judger is, if you've done something that wasn't on your list, will you write it down on your list just so you can scratch it off? You know what? Perceivers, they'll make lists, and halfway through the day, they'll probably lose the list. Because, it was a great idea, but it's definitely not something that has to be strictly adhered to. And, oh yeah, I did that. They may not scratch something off until the end of the day, if they do still have that list within arm's reach. A J would definitely have that list with them at all times, because third thing that I say about J's is they're more excited when they finish a project. A perceiver is more excited when they start. Perceiver starts out with great energy and a great attitude, and they kind of fade out as it gets to, and you know what, if they get it done, they get it done. That was great. And if they don't get it done, well, that's okay, because I did other stuff too.
Well, I think that's a great way to show how we need both of them in this world, because if a judger and a perceiver would work together, the perceiver would bring the energy in the beginning and the judger would bring it in the end, so that way it comes out top.
Yeah.
Now, question, could your letters change?
Nope, your behavior can change. And that's why I like to explain things to people that when it comes to functional order, it's very important for you to know your true nature. The only way that your behavior would change over the years is if your life experience has taught you that you will have better results if you perform the activities of another personality. So a certain disposition, a certain person inclined in a certain way could say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to learn how to do things that are not my nature, but I'm going to need one of three things in order to justify investing that time and energy in learning that behavior that's outside of my comfort zone. Those three things are motivation or compensation or restoration. That means that a person, in order to learn and master skills and activities that are not true to their personality, their natural personality, which by the way, you are born with, okay, if you need a reason to do it or a reward for having done it or a recovery time, literally just to get yourself back after you have completed it, it's not your personality. But it's great that you're doing those things in life because those things in life do need to get done. That's how we know it's called a functional order.
Okay, I know the functional order is much more complicating and many people just don't get it. But I think it'd be really good to explain it to the listeners because, first of all, you'll understand yourself on a much deeper level and obviously your partner on a deeper level. But it will also explain why you feel like you're all the letters because you do all of it. Well, you do all of it, but in a specific order that works best for you. So you want to start by explaining to us what the functional order is.
So there are four letters of functionality: dominant, the auxiliary, the tertiary, and the inferior. Dominant is like breathing. It's so easy for you and it's so natural for you that if you actually stopped doing it, you would die. Your auxiliary function is like eating. You need to do it, you need to do it periodically throughout the day. You just don't need to do it all the time. Your tertiary function is like walking. It's not hard per se, but after a while you get tired doing it. And then the last one, the inferior function, is like running. It's exhausting and it's frustrating and it's hard. You're gonna be exhausted and you might even be frustrated if you have to do it for more than a little bit at a time. Or in order to do it well, you're gonna have to practice it all the time.
That makes sense. We all have activities that for us, they're really easy to do. And for some other people, they really have to learn and train to go and do it well. So I like that analogy. Now, I know the functional order is talking about the middle two letters and it's talking about the two letters that you're not in the middle. But how do we figure out our actual functional order?
Okay, so when we're talking about determining your functional order, the last letter is going to determine which of the middle letters is extroverted. Now, the second function, the second letter of your personality is a perceptive activity. The third letter of your personality is a judging activity. If you are a P, the second letter will be extroverted, which means the third letter will be introverted. If you're a J, your third letter will be extroverted, which means your second letter will be introverted. INTP would be introverted thinking, extroverted intuition, then introverted sensing, and extroverted feeling.
So we end up having to do all four middle letters. Now, anyone who did not get that, especially if you didn't write it down, you probably didn't. I'm going to put in the show notes a cheat sheet. So as long as you know your personality type, you'll be able to figure out what your functional order is. Now, if you don't know yet what your personality type is, go back and re-listen to this episode, hear all Gabriella's questions again, and try to decide which one you are. And then go to the show notes and you'll have right there in front of you what your functional order is.
What I tell people is in life, when you are doing your number 3 and number 4 on your list, your tertiary and your inferior functions, you will have to do them. Just know that you'll only be able to do them for a certain period of time, and you're only going to perform them well up to a certain point. You need motivation, you need compensation, and you need restoration in order to be able to do the things that are not your nature and to do them well. Please know that no matter what it is that you have done in your life, your number 3 and number 4 activities, the two middle letters that are not your natural personality, are going to be challenging for you. And even if you do them well with a whole lot of practice, it's important that you don't do them too much. If you do your tertiary and inferior functions too much, you will harm yourself.
Okay, so now I understand my personality type and my functional order, and I understand my partner's personality type and functional order. How do I use this information to improve my relationship and really understand my partner?
Well, they're different in that the level of their activities is probably very different from yours, but also the social orientation of how they're doing that letter is very different from yours. I'll give you a beautiful example. I've been married for 26 years, and I had my husband figured out as an ESTP. I understand that as an ESTP, his perceptive activity of sensing is extroverted, and as an extrovert, that means it's number one. That means that his thinking activity is introverted, and it's number two. I understand that when he is doing something in an extroverted way, he does need for it to be a sensing activity. And when he's doing something that is a thinking activity, he needs to be left alone. Or when he's making that decision with me, I need to be as non-socially stimulating for him as possible, because for his introverted thinking activity, he really does better when he can get his energy from inside himself. Now we're married, so like I said, I can be around him, but I need to not talk. I need to just say to
Right.
him, do you need to just think out loud in my general direction? And he says, absolutely. And I'm going to be talking to no one in particular, but I want to have you here with me so that you can know what I'm thinking about. But when we're together and we're sensing things, he is very, very happy to do his dominant function of extroverted sensing with me participating. I'll be honest with you, I don't like sensing activities. I'm an intuitive, but I know that if I'm eating food that I think is absolutely gross, that he cooked, he feels loved by me. And when I say to him, you know what, I've got a lot of introverted thinking that I need to do as an INTP. I need you to leave me alone for 6 hours in the bedroom. I promise you that if I'm literally left alone, I will think for 6 hours about how to do 10 hours worth of activities in 15 minutes. I will get more done if I am left alone to think about how to do it for 6 hours. I will be more productive for you as a sensory perceiver. You're going to be very impressed with the fact that I can do brilliant things in 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm impressive. I don't have to waste time doing things in a stupid way. I can actually be left alone and become an exponentially more productive person. In the beginning, he was like, why don't you want to be with me? Are you mad at me? No, baby, I love you. I just can't think while you're around because my thinking is introverted and it's my dominant function. So he knows to say, okay, you look like you're doing some pretty good thinking. I'm going to be over there doing something sensing. Let me know when you're done and we can come together and do something really good with each other. Not misinterpret it, not take it as a personal offense. And when we're both doing different kinds of things, we can facilitate and encourage and support each other's happiness and the success of our relationship, because a relationship is always better when both people are in a good mood.
Yes, and once you understand yourself and you understand your partner and why they're behaving that way, it takes away half the problems. Maybe
It
even
really
more, it
does.
takes away the whole thing.
Well, and the inferior function especially. Okay, bottom line, my inferior function is extroverted feeling. When I have to be around people and be emotionally responsive while I'm being socially interactive and I'm being loving and generous and warm with people I don't know and don't like, my husband immediately knows that when I'm done after about 2 hours of that, I need something chalk. And he'll hold me and kiss me and say, oh my God, you were dying, weren't you? And I love you and thank you so much for doing that. And anything you want, baby, what do you want me to do for you now? I will absolutely take care of you because you've just run up Mount Everest barefoot in the snow. You're dying inside. Thank you, honey. Yes, I really want some chocolate. Can you get me some chocolate? I feel very loved when my husband has his introverted intuition, and I'm like, wow, you've been thinking about that by yourself on an intuitive level for almost half an hour. Do you need to be stimulated in some way? I'll let you watch soccer now that you've done what is absolutely horrible for you. You should never do your inferior function more than an hour a day in order to maintain a good level of functionality. Doing things like your tertiary or your inferior function, you are going to need to do them. But when you're doing them, you need to take good care of yourself, and the people around you need to support you and help you as you're doing them in order for you to not be upset that you had to do those things. And so when I say you need compensation or you need restoration or you need motivation in order to do those things, that's okay. okay. You can say, I'm not going to do this unless I get paid. That's why people need a job. That's why they have a job to do. It could be their auxiliary or their tertiary or their inferior function. Or when they're done, they just need to recover and restore themselves because it sucked all the life out of them. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means that was their inferior function. And that's okay because that was someone else's dominant function. And they can do that 12 hours a day and feel fabulous when they're done doing it. But I promise you, that person's inferior function is going to suck the life out of them. Well, you know what? That's okay because it was your dominant function. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So if we understand our personality type and our functional order and how we work, and we sit down and we go and discuss it with our partner, everything's just going to go and be okay?
Oh, no. No, specific example. This is one of the best things that I love to tell people. My husband has the same personality as Donald Trump. My husband is Mexican and he's very egocentric and he's very hard to talk to and he's very short-sighted. He's all the things. But I always say to him, look, I understand that your extroverted sensing is your dominant function. So while we talk, let's go ahead and let you do something visually stimulating and you don't have to look at me. Or when you're making a decision, your thinking is introverted. I will literally lead you in order for you to have all of those thoughts. If you know that you're going to be making a really important decision, you need to tell me what that is. I will honor what you need and I will respect how you work. And if there's something else going on, you have to be honest with me. But here's the bottom line. Most women don't have the strength of character to say to their men, I understand that there are just going to be certain things about you that are going to be annoying and that are going to seem selfish. But if you understand as a couple that giving and not holding a grudge and not being passive aggressive and not taking things personally will then make the other person say, wow, I really appreciate that you did that for me. And when you gave me that space and you gave me that place and you didn't control me or manipulate me or guilt trip me, I want to give you everything you need. I will absolutely give to you what you tell me you honestly need. Do you have any idea how generous men are when they know that what they could do could make their woman happy? They will do anything for you if they know that you love them enough to give them their space and give them their place and give them their dignity and respect. Men are so wonderful to.
So you really understand your husband and make sure to give him a space when he makes decisions.
Yes. Whereas with me, my introverted thinking is my dominant function. But when I am in the process of taking things apart and putting them back together and kind of mulling over an idea, that for me is extroverted. That's my intuition. And there are going to be times when I just need for him to sit there and listen. And then I need him to respond and give me some ideas and then go ahead and, well, but maybe what about, because literally talking for 2 hours about a whole lot of nothing makes him absolutely crazy. But if he knows that I can verbally vomit about everything all the time, and then he can say, okay, sweetie, you know that you just made me crazy, I can say, absolutely, and thank you so much for letting me do this. I promise you now that if you let me walk for 5 miles, when I come back, I'm going to have a decision that you're gonna love. And he's absolutely willing to do something like that and be very, very patient with me because he knows then that what he has done for me is the foundation for something amazing that I'm going to do with my introverted thinking as I'm going for a walk. That's where my true epiphany is going to happen.
Yeah, when you know your partner's personality type, it's so much easier to understand them and be there for them because you understand how they work and where it's coming from.
Exactly. And I promise you, it's a universal policy. You know what? In all different religions and all different theologies and all different philosophies, there is more joy in giving than in receiving. And when you know as partners what is the most valuable thing to the person that you love, for you to give them, you really do enjoy giving them, even if it's something that would make you crazy. If you know that the ROI on that generosity is going to be exponential, most people really do know that, first of all, making someone else happy does feel good to you. And then knowing that that person's happiness is going to improve the quality of their functionality, of their being, of their body and their heart and their mind, it's always worth giving that time or effort or work, whatever it is that you're doing. You feel good giving, and then they feel good knowing that you loved them enough to give. But I'll tell you something, this is the biggest challenge that I see in the American culture. I wouldn't even call it a culture, let's call it a society. Feminism has made women very angry and very confrontational in their relationships. And so when men genuinely say, tell me what you want, just tell me what you need, and I love you so much, I'll absolutely give it to you. The confrontational mentality of, you can't control me and I deserve as much as you do, and well, what if they just genuinely don't know? Men are very simple creatures. When a woman knows who she is and she can say, give me exactly what I need in exactly the right way, and I promise you, I'm going to be a platinum person for you when I've taken care of myself or done things the way they need to be done, men never say no. And if they do, you need to get out of the relationship. Men love to know what would make a woman happy and healthy and successful, because it means they'll be fun. It means they'll be fun to be with, and they will be successful in what they do. Men are very, very willing to give women what they want and what they need. A woman needs to be comfortable saying, this is what I want, this is what I need. Thank you for loving me enough to give it to me.
This transformation doesn't happen overnight. So what advice can you give to someone who's right now in the process of trying to understand themselves and their partner?
I would say really practice with yourself. And what people don't realize is getting to know who you are can be really difficult, because depending on what you're currently doing in your life relative to your true nature, you may actually need to rewire yourself. I love the example of put the mask on yourself first before you help anybody that you love, even someone like a child. The best thing you can do is find out what those expressions and what those terms mean in a practical daily life way, and practice getting good at them. Yes, learn about your partner and practice with your partner, but most importantly, get yourself very, very healthy, because the more healthy you are, the easier it's going to be for you to explain to someone exactly who you are. And one of the things I love to use as an example is ballet. I was dancing as a ballerina when I was 5 years old. My teacher never said balance. She never said, get your balance, get your balance. When you started to fall over, she said, get your center yours. Because if you know where the core of your energy and the core of your weight is inside of yourself, it's in a very specific place inside of you, then your arms and your legs and your head and your back could be doing 5 different things in 5 different ways, but you always know where the core of your energy and your strength are. And in a relationship, it's exactly the same thing. Figure out how you move through life, figure out where your energy and where your functionality is in the daily activities, because if you know yourself really, really well, getting centered inside of yourself isn't that hard. And when the people that love you know how to relate to you and study you, they would be willing to work with you and work around you and respond to you. It's very important that you know the other person, but you're never going to be able to dance with another person until you are successfully able to dance alone. Always make sure that you are relationship material before you invite anyone else into your emotional space.
Thank you so much, Gabriella, for coming on today and making it so easy for us to figure out our personality type and our partner's personality type, so that way we can have an awesome relationship.
And thank you for having me. I had a great time talking with you today.
Me too. And guys, if you've been able to figure out your personality type, you're going to love the next episode, because there we're going to go even deeper on this and get into the temperaments together with a different guest. And if you haven't been able to figure it out, don't worry. It might come to you in a day or two. And if not, I hope on the next episode, as we go through the temperaments, you'll be able to figure that out, and then you'll be able to figure out your personality type. So, see ya there. Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much, and have an awesome day.